Hello, my name is Chelsea Seward, and this is my presentation on education in the developing world for my class IDS 401 Global Society. Education is important across the world, especially now, where education can provide for a better job, more money, and overall can provide a better life situation, and is a necessity for the ever-changing economy of that country and region or all over the world. I will be focusing on education in the developing world in general. There will be no specific place that I am focusing on, but much of the data and information I have collected is coming from the many different areas throughout Africa. According to GPE, Global Partnership for Education, 250 million children around the world fail to reach grade 4 or reach it without learning to read or write. There are many factors that inhibit education in these developing countries. The first is poverty. Education is one of the surest means we have to end extreme poverty in our time, which is stated by Jim Yong Kim, World Bank Group President. Poverty is a major factor which keeps children from going to school and is also something that these children will grow up in and can also live in poverty without a proper education. Living in poverty has caused and continues to cause major problems in the education field for the developing world. If all students in low-income countries left school with basic reading skills, 171 million people could be lifted out of poverty, according to the globalpartnership.org. Another factor is the lack of education amongst parents. Illiteracy among parents has been a major factor for their children dropping out of school. Parents who are not well educated or who are illiterate are unable to help their children with their schoolwork. Poverty has also affected the parents. And if the parents have lived in poverty, then it's possible that they weren't able to have access to a quality education. Another factor is additional cost. Poverty again has hindered the amount of children able to gain access to an education. Emmanuel Jamez has been the Sector Director of Human Development in the World Bank's East Asia region since 2002, and in an article titled The Public Subsidization of Education and Health in Developing Countries, a Review of Equity and Efficiency, Jamez talks about the private costs for families living in poverty. Jamez explains that costs for educational services may be higher for poor people because they live in poverty, but also because they may live in rural areas as well. Living in rural areas means that they are farther away from schools and other places that offer educational services. Many times that means that people will have to pay for housing to be able to use these educational services. Books, uniforms, writing supplies, along with many other items are also needed, which can be expensive or difficult to obtain in poverty-stricken areas. Another factor is gender barriers. Among the world's children, it's girls that are left without an education. According to GPE, Global Partnership for Education, 31 million girls of primary school age are still out of school around the world. Cultural values and early marriages have had an effect on whether girls will be able to go to school or not. Corrupt governments is also a factor. Corrupt governments is another factor that is born from poverty. For example, corruption is very high in Africa and the corruption goes all the way to the hospitals. An article from BBC News states that in schools in Africa, a student cannot pass examinations without bribing their teachers. Nick Clegg has been the leader of Liberal Democrats since 2007 and was also a deputy prime minister between 2010 and March 2015. Two quotes that he has stated are very powerful and show the importance of education and the importance of ending corruption. I have come to understand even more clearly than before that if we want to live in a society where everyone has a fair chance to live the life they want and to bounce back from misfortune too, then education is the key. For far too long, the world's poorest people have seen no benefit from the vast natural resources in their own backyards. It is time to end the injustice where ordinary people are silent witnesses, left to suffer without basic services as the profit from the country's assets are hidden and plundered by corrupt regimes. Here's a map showing how corrupt each country is by color. The darker the red, the more corrupt that country/region is. Here's a chart which shows the ratio of female to male schooling around the world. As you can see, by 2010, it has risen steadily than it was in 1970. And here is a poster that was put out by World Bank, UNESCO, and OECD, which shows many different facts about education in the developing world. Programs and organizations that are set up to help combat education deprivation. Programs and organizations have been set up to help children and adults in the developing countries have access to a good quality and long-lasting education. These programs and organizations are also set up to combat the many factors that inhibit people from attending school. The main programs that I am focusing on are the World Bank Group, Global Partnership for Education, or GPE, UNICEF, or United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, and UNESCO, United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. These programs and organizations are set up to help provide money, supplies, technology, transportation, teachers, and more help for teachers and the building of schools in more rural areas. The World Bank Group works with governments all over the world to help strengthen their programs to give better education for everyone across the globe. In 2001, only 2 million students were in school in Afghanistan, of whom less than 1% were girls. And with the help of the World Bank Group, enrollment has quadrupled to 8 million students, of whom 39% are girls. And the World Bank Group's goal is to end extreme poverty by the year 2030. GPE is an organization that is all about education for children across the world and focuses on those who are affected by extreme poverty and who are most vulnerable. Global Partnership for Education was developed in 2002 and is comprised of 60 developing countries, donor governments, and international organizations. With the help of GPE, 22.5 million students are in primary school since 2002. 69% of girls finish primary school instead of only 56% in 2002. And $4.3 billion in grants have been dispersed to education since 2003. UNICEF is an organization that is looking at education and is strengthening it by providing safe and good quality areas for children to go to school. According to UNICEF, access to education that is of poor quality is tantamount to no education at all. UNICEF is constantly working on developing child-friendly schools where children have access to the right tools, a safe and quiet environment that is adapted for learning. UNICEF's main priority is that every person in the world can and always will have access to a quality education. UNICEF states, "We are committed to ensuring that all children, regardless of gender, ethnicity, socio-economic background, or circumstances, realize their right to a good quality education." UNESCO's creation in 1945, their mission has been to contribute to the building of peace, poverty eradication, lasting development, and intercultural dialogue, with education as one of its principal activities to achieve this aim. UNESCO runs a program called EFA, or Education for All, and its goal is to spread education worldwide to children and to adults, and they also include technical and vocational education and training. We cannot claim success until every last child is in school, learning foundational skills. Finishing the job on access to education will not be easy because the 120 million children who remain out of primary and lower secondary school are the hardest to reach due to poverty, gender barriers, remoteness, and disability. This was also stated by Jim Yong Kim, who is the World Bank Group president. Negative effects of inhibited education in developing countries are unhealthy lifestyle, poverty, limited job options, and negative effect on the economy. We know that a lack of education can lead to a person living their life in poverty, can also lead to an unhealthy lifestyle, limited job options, and can have a negative effect on the economy as well as your children. Children will be facing risk every day without proper education, and children are exposed to these risks because of illnesses, infections, poor nutrition, and parents who have no educational background can have an effect on their children. Gorman and Pallette did a 20-year study in a rural in Guatemala, where they wanted to see if early exposure to biological, environmental, and cognitive risk were able to be avoided by participating in school. Gorman and Pillette found that as risk for the adolescents increased, their performance at school decreased. A Guttmacher policy review in summer 2011, an article was written by Heather D. Boonstra titled Advancing Sexuality Education in Developing Countries, Evidence and Implications. This article talks about how the developed world has begun to introduce new kinds of sex education to the young masses since times have been changing. But this type of new education has not reached the developing world. At the global level, within the United States, for the recognition of comprehensive sexuality information, education as a basic human right, still sexuality education of any kind is not available in many regions of the world, and adolescents' knowledge of sexual and reproductive health is not detailed and myths are common. This was stated by Boonstra in her journal. Many misconceptions about sex education are still around. According to Boonstra, there are many who still believe that HIV can still be spread by a mosquito bite, or that a man with HIV can be cured by having sex with a virgin. The Center for Global Development released a guide to global development, where stated in the article, young people who have completed primary education are less than half as likely to contract HIV as those with little or no schooling, and educated mothers have healthier children. Sex education has been making its way into programs that go into the developing world. For example, UNESCO supports a program called UNAIDS, which focuses on reducing the sexual transmission of the virus, educating people on the virus and how it can be spread, and eliminating new infections among children. Having a good education can lead to better income, better lifestyle. Your children have a better chance of succeeding through school and is better for the economy. Having little to no education can have strong negative effects on children, adults, their lives, and their economy. There are many benefits once children and adults begin their education, and this presents to them more opportunities, a better future, and helps them create a positive experience for themselves and the adults on their children, and it's overall better for the economy. For example, developing countries that join GPE have a 10% increase in domestic financing. UNESCO helps promote culture as a powerful engine for economic growth to generate income and stimulate employment. And by culture, UNESCO means incorporating culture into all development policies, be they related to education, science, communication, health, environment, or cultural tourism. And on the other hand, at supporting the development of the cultural sector through creative industries. With children attending school, they will have a better outlook on life. A success story, thanks to the help of GPE, is that a kindergarten in Moldova, after 10 years of being shut down, GPE came in and with support got the kindergarten back up and running. Viorica Istarati is the teacher that runs the kindergarten, stated her village of about 3,500 residents will survive and prosper as long as their kindergarten is filled with the laughter of children. Success stories like these are happening all over the world. There is still much work to do, and the problem is not solved until every child and adult has a proper education. Education overall is the driving force for countries around the world to provide for their people. Education can give people more opportunities to have a better and healthier life for themselves, their families. Increased education throughout the deprived world can help stimulate the global economy and continue to help make improvements for more children and adults in these developing countries. Here are the references to all the links that I used throughout my entire presentation.